All right, welcome everyone to the first Flux developer meeting. I just thought it was a good idea to bring everyone together, like do a round of introductions if you want. If you don't want, that's fine too. If you just want to listen in, that's cool. Michael wanted to say a few words on where he sees Flux going, what's coming up, and then we can just have a bit of a chat, get All right, who wants to go first?
I'll go first, because yeah, mine's kind of an easy one. So I'm Michael. Originally, I work in London for Weaveworks. I am the lead dev here on Flux, and I used to work at RabbitMQ or VMware. Yeah, that's me. So that's an easy one, and I'm pretty much working most of my time on Flux at the minute here. Daniel?
Yeah, I'm Daniel Helbach. I live in Berlin. I'm also working for Weaveworks as a community manager. Before I worked in the Ubuntu world, also as a community manager and taking care of the developer communities we had there. And my interest in Flux is also developer community, trying to see where people want to go, try to bring a bit of structure and fun. And that's why I thought like do a meeting and see where people stand. All right. Anyone else who wants to go next?
Sure, I can go.
Cool.
My name is Nick Kabatov. I used to work, well, I'm in Montreal, Canada. I used to work for a company called Untitled Medical Systems, and I was involved there in setting up a continuous delivery system, which is how I discovered Flux. I really liked it, so I started getting more involved. Now I recently transitioned to working at HashiCorp, where we don't use Kubernetes so much. So I'm staying involved because I don't want to lose the Kubernetes knowledge that I've gained, and I want to stay within the community.
Flux for Nomad, am I right?
Maybe.
I can go next if you want. My name is Brant. I work at a software development company based out of Canada, and we are working on kind of migrating all of our microservice infrastructure to Kubernetes as a totally greenfield project. So I took on the task of, setting up all of our continuous delivery infrastructure for that, and decided that Flux would be a great candidate to help us out with that. So I guess I'm coming at this from the perspective of a very enthusiastic user.
I actually think my story is the same as Brent's.
Cool. So we still got. Oh, looks like it had dropped off. Cool.
Quite thing, drop the mic.
Yeah, no, mic drop, exactly. Well, let's see if we've got him back again. Let's see if the chat works.
Stefan, do you maybe want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Stefan Prodan. I also work for Weaveworks, and I'm involved in the developer experience team, and I work on Flux and the whole GitHub story around Flux. And I really enjoy working on Flux and trying out Flux. Great.
Cool. All right. So as Daniel said earlier, I was going to say a few words. I really just wanted to kind of give a quick state of Flux address, but it really will be quite quick. I wanted to mention that Flux is now not just a Weaveworks project. It is, I would say, bona fide open source, because we invited some people to be maintainers, and they very happily to be accepted. So we now have kind of expanded our capacity, which is really cool. And let me mention, so I wanted to mention some underway things that are underway or have landed recently or are about to land, which are pretty cool. Here it says that his Zoom client ignores the mic. Oh dear, okay, well, at least we've got chat. We'll always have chat. So some recent things that have landed that may be interesting that I wanted to highlight. So one thing is, you may or may not know that Flux is used as part of our Weave Cloud, which is our commercial kind of platform for operations in Kubernetes. And Flux kind of connects to it, and you can remote control it, and you see what it's doing and make releases and so on. And one thing that was added for Weave Cloud by a person here at Weaveworks was showing rollout progress in the UI. And a person has put in a pull request to also make this an interactive display when you do Flux Skittle release of rollout progress, which is pretty cool. So that's underway in a PR from Ian Martin. Another really cool PR that's on the go is garbage collecting resources that are no longer in the Git repo. So a person, Joe Haddad, came up with a way of doing that. And so we've been kind of going back and forth on implementing that. And so that'll be really useful. And it'll be behind a flag, so behavior won't change unless you want it to, which is often pretty important. But of course, we try and make it as foolproof as possible in any case. And then another thing that is I kind of still regard as an ongoing in progress thing is the Helm Operator, which is, I would say, kind of that still in a beta release, and but steadily improving. And I think possibly is the thing that gets the most kind of contributions in terms of issues and PRs and attention, which is really cool and even slightly unexpected, but in a nice way. And I personally would like to try and get that to a 1.0 release, in the next coming months, because it seems to have more or less been a kind of multiplier in terms of the attention that Flux gets. So let's double down on that. And then quickly, some kind of big ticket things that I personally would really like to crack for Flux. So one is supporting syncing multiple repos, Git repos, which just comes up all the time. There's kind of a reasonably obvious way to do it, but I've never figured out all the details. And another one that would be nice to crack is supporting things like customize natively, or alternatively having a sort of composition with other tooling, so that you can run things through a stage before they get applied, or lint things or stuff like that. So there's a bit of overlap maybe with CI, continuous integration tooling, but I think stuff like customize would be really useful to support. And again, I haven't quite figured out how to do that. Ideas are always welcome. And that is it from me on that topic. So, Daniel, I guess we open the floor.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thanks for the update. I think maybe we could just stay on that subject. Like, if any one of you has plans, like things you would like to see, or you're working on, or you're just missing, I think that would be interesting to hear for all of us.
What is required for the Helm Operator to reach the 1.0?
That's a really good question. And I think that is something we can do kind of collaboratively. There's stuff that's just not implemented, like I mooted a design for using secrets for getting, the keys and so on, stuff for each Helm release. And then there are issues that we already know about that are kind of about polish and reliability and so on. There's a few of those, and things like making it less chatty in the logs. I think if we made it work, if we got that kind of polish to a certain level and made it work as described in the how it works, or that kind of design, that for me would be a pretty reasonable 1.0. I don't see that it has any huge drawbacks at that point. It's good enough to kind of cover 80% for what it's setting out to do. But I'm absolutely, I don't know Helm that well, so I'm totally open to ideas about things that would hold it back, that we would need to add or remove.
Would it help to label all the issues in GitHub, just go over them again and see what's totally blocking, and then maybe we do another meeting, or we ask people on Slack what do you feel is missing, and set it out for a series of releases, make that the theme.
Yeah, we could have a milestone, do it that way. I'm never quite sure whether I'm supposed to use a milestone or a project or a label, but one of those.
I think it would be just nice to have a list of things and say, okay, these are the 5 big things we need to land, and then the other 5 which would be nice to have, and tell people okay, this is what we're working on, and you can start testing this and give us feedback, and then we can add the small things that break. Yeah,
and it would make a strong release if it was sort of by popular acclaim. It's here's the stuff that people said was what they needed, and we have a lot of that already, because a lot of it is done in response to people popping up on #Flux and in issues and so on. But making it more explicit, what would you want to see in 1.0 is a pretty good idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, particular things that you had in mind here?
No, for us it's working fine at the moment. So, but we are pretty basic. I mean, we don't have really complex applications or huge infrastructure or anything like that. It's we have 5 products and that's it. So I think our requirements aren't as specific as some others.
Brant, you're a Helm user, aren't you? Have I got that right?
Yeah, we do use Helm, but it's mostly to install third-party things like Cert Manager and Seal Secrets Control, that kind of thing.
Same for us.
We're not at the point where we're using Helm for our own apps. That's something
Gotcha.
that we're still trying to figure out how to do.
We actually do that for our consumers, because we have various apps that are the same app but just run different commands. And we use Helm for that. But for normal deployments or normal web applications, we go with plain deployment manifest, because it's easier to maintain.
Interesting. Oh, that's cool. So you actually kind of get a decent mix by using Flux and Helm Operator. You can get both of those done. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that we're still trying to figure out how to do is basically how to structure all of our Git repos, because if we have like say 50 different microservices, should everyone have their own Helm chart? Should we keep those in the individual repos or keep those in one central place? So it's kind of a question that we just punted down the road, and for now we're just saying, okay, well, here's a wall of YAML. It's not great, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure out a better way later.
Yeah, stuff like the sort of more abstract problems, but which is why I didn't mention them, but sort of multi-user support, let's say, or maybe having kind of better support for narrowing things down to namespaces and stuff like that, I think would be useful both for the Helm operator and for Flux itself. We've got some of it. It's not really ironclad. But yeah, I kind of have been kicking that can down the road a bit as well, because people have quite radically different requirements a lot of the time. The same thing with multiple repos and deciding how they're going to organize for different environments and stuff. It's just so many ways of doing it. It's really unclear what the best ones are. Yeah. All you can really do is kind of provide flexible tooling and let people work it out. I'm pretty sure Stefan will have his own wish list.
Yeah, about the multi-user part, I think the Helm operator is restricted to a single namespace, because you just use that selector in the watch. So you watch only for that namespace where Helm releases can be deployed, and that's about it. But for Flux, it's more complicated, because with Flux you would bootstrap part of your cluster. I'm thinking about this use case, right? When you bootstrap part of your cluster and your SRE team has a Flux, and I mean, developer teams, each one will have its own Flux, but more than one namespace, couple of namespaces. And maybe you don't want to deploy one Flux per namespace, you want to deploy one Flux per team. So yeah, it's more complicated than I first thought of it. One namespace and that's it, but yeah. Also, I think on the, I don't know if it should be part of the 1.0 release or not, but what we added the external Helm chart support, but we cannot automatically update the chart version like we are doing today for container images. Mm-hmm. So maybe we can leave that out of 1.0 or don't, and say until we have the same features as Flux has with the deployment file, until then we'll not release 1.0 until it's feature complete. So something like that.
Yeah, that's a funny one, because it kind of floats somewhere between Flux and Helm Operator, which is, it's maybe an arbitrary distinction, but because it's Flux that does the automation.
Flux it's a shared responsibility.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's a bit of a funny one.
Yeah, it's not an easy decision to do. Where do we put all this code? Because if we put it in the operator part, we need the one that's currently run by Flux will have like a duplicate thing, and probably don't want that.
Yeah, I do have an ambition to kind of tease apart the various bits of Flux D so that you can kind of pick and choose things a bit more, and maybe stuff like automating the help charts is to be part of that plan. You run it as a sidecar for, as well as the image automation. You could choose not to run it.
Yeah. People ask us about not shutting down Flux talking to the container registries.
Yeah, that should be its own component. Definitely.
Yeah, that's another thing that I think we got like 5 requests now for this await.
The last week, I've seen like 2 or 3 requests in the last weeks.
Last weeks, yeah. So yeah, this thing will come up a lot. But yeah, that's not Helm related. It's Flux.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Although, you know, we could use similar bits and pieces for automating Helm chart releases. And that would be a lot easier if the bits were separate.
Yeah, really happy with the Helm integration. I think I can, for example, imagine a simple, I don't know, CI/CD pipeline with using Helm chart versions as releases. I mean, everything is deployed through a new chart that contains whatever container images, changes in configuration, and you could automate that with, I don't know, something like GitHub Actions and Flux.
Oh yeah, that's something that I forgot to mention that would be sort of slipped off my radar slightly. It'd be nice to make Flux a bit more usable from CI pipelines. And my understanding of that is that you've got to have the ability to kind of wait for stuff to happen, which is not always easy with Kubernetes in general. But so for instance, being able to do something like, I'm going to push a new image. Now, I know that's happened, and now I want to tell Flux to use that image and wait until that is done and deployed before I move on to actually testing it. And that waiting bit is quite hard. Well, you have to kind of bake your own solution at present for that. But I think that would make a lot of people's lives easier when they're using CI and Flux. Does that ring a bell, Stefan?
So I was, yesterday I was working on Flagger, and I've added something to the canary deployment spec. I've copied, in fact, from the deployment spec. Is progress deadline. You can specify progress deadline in seconds for whatever you want to do. So I've added that with the same default, 10 minutes. And after that, I can trigger a Slack alert if the canary deployment failed and was rolled back due to that, because the deployment is just stuck. It will not advance anymore. There's nothing to wait. So you have to have a timeout somewhere. Right? I don't think how you can actually do it without an actual timeout. Things will just get freeze at some stages in the deployment, and that's it.
Yeah, either from the inside or from the outside. So progress deadline is from the inside, but you could also say, you know, Flux will release timeout equals, and do it from the outside as well. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about this setting should be per workload. I mean, if you deploy a stateful set, let's say it's a MongoDB, it could take a long time for them to actually finish. And you want to set a timeout for that. If it takes more than, I don't know, 1 hour, roll it back, I don't care, something went wrong. But for, I don't know, stateless apps, you should be 60 seconds. If your Golang web server didn't start in 60 seconds, something is bad. So roll it as soon as possible, right? So I think it's a per workload setting more than just Flux timeout for the whole operation.
Sure, yeah. So maybe something where it uses the deadline if it's present, and otherwise there's no overriding timeout. Anyway, something like that. Needs a bit of design.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a cool idea to have that feedback. I think it's you can also use that to get feedback on something like GitHub, right? On a pull request or something like that, you could run that part, and if it's timeout, whatever, you could write back to GitHub API and post that final state there and get feedback to developers, whatever.
Yeah, I think Rolly and Elena, that's a couple of colleagues at Weaveworks are working on doing notifications based on the kind of final rollout status. So maybe that works in there.
Yeah.
We could use it for CI as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Daniel, do we have more stuff on the agenda?
Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have any feedback, things that you would like to see landing, or things you were planning on looking into? I mean, about the Helm 1.0 thing, I guess you and Michael, you and I could probably take a look at issues and start putting something together, and then we could see, like, do we need more feedback? Like, is there any setups we didn't think about, or I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's anything required, or
let's talk about it in #Flux in the next few days or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, for me personally, I like the idea of themed releases. One theme I was interested in was user experience. So small things like getting Flux control, like you just download it from somewhere, you just use whatever your operating system gives you. Things like making log messages like very clear so people know where to look for the issue. And also docs. Like, I think the docs have come a long way. I think they're in better shape now. But now I think I would like to start working on some tutorials, like, for example, the automated annotation. That's something people seem to trip over every now and then. It's just such a powerful feature. It would be just great to just a tutorial, do it, and then you're all set, that kind of thing. So if any of you have ideas, things you would like to see covered there, come talk to me. Another thing where I saw some discussion was integration tests. Like, I know that Nick started some work on it, and there was some discussion about it. Maybe we could revive that thread and let's see where we can take it, because I think it could also be interesting to contribute to, add a new test to it or extra stuff so we can cover all bases there.
Yeah, I would love to see that PR landed. I know Nick has been really busy with various things recently, and so it's been difficult probably to pick it up again. I picked it up myself a couple of times and then had to set it down. So, same thing with me as well.
Yeah, I would have brought it up earlier when you were talking about ambitions we have, but since I figured this was more of the community focus and this was more of an internal developer concern, I didn't bother. But yeah, I'm keen to get back to it, or if someone else wants to take it up, I don't object, of course.
Cool. Well, let's figure out what's blocking us, and then whoever can kind of try and take it forward.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, that would make me a lot more sort of confident, in preventing regressions and things like that, definitely.
Excellent.
And I think we can use the new repository I've created as an example. So there is a FluxGet example.
Oh yeah, by the way, side note, it's really good to have a kind of fresh, unburdened example repo. So thank you for that, Stefan.
Yeah, and I'm thinking I want for us to cover I don't know, all the critical paths.
Yeah, like show the annotations, how they work and stuff.
Yeah, test, have a deployment with every kind of annotation that we support. And I don't know, in the integration test, we can just apply all that repo and make sure, write a test for it, that everything is in place. Damien wrote, a colleague of ours wrote library in Go to run this kind of testing. Right? It waits for some pods to be up and stuff like that.
Okay.
We use it in EKS cutoff for integration tests.
Cool. And so back to you, Daniel. I think you would...
Yeah, I think that was all I had. It's just a question, like, do we want to repeat this meeting? Do we want to do this again? Maybe ask around in Slack again. Maybe this time didn't suit most of the people. I don't know. Like, I could maybe, I think this year it's going to be a bit tight, but maybe early next year, and then see if we need a regular cadence and if we can short circuit some of the discussions this way.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to try that. Cool.
Yeah, and we could... Oh, sorry, Nick.
I was just agreeing, it makes sense.
Cool, yeah. We can maybe solicit agenda items ahead of time and stuff like that, you know, for people that helps to get people to turn up as well, you know, if their thing is going to get talked about. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. So do you think like monthly is a reasonable...
I guess it depends what we want to do there. So the Weave Scope team, they've done them like every 2 weeks now, but they also had like a standing agenda item when they said, okay, we're going to have a look at the open PR since last time, or just go through the new issues that came in, just quickly zip through them and say like, okay, I'm going to respond to this guy. I'm going to take a look, like this is a real issue. I don't know if that would be helpful. I think if we just want to get feedback and then like today say, okay, Helm 1.0, we want to do this, like for the general charting out where we want to go. I don't think we would need like a fortnightly or like every 2 weeks call. I don't know. It depends what we want to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure much happens on the scale of 2 weeks, so less often that might be better.
If I compare Reworks Scope to Reworks Flux, they have 388 issues open. So I think they have a lot of more buzz they need to discuss.
Right. Yeah, that's like at least twice as many, so twice as often.
But only 9 open pull requests, so...
I'm going to randomly close 4.
Merge.
Parity, yeah. Random, yes, close, merge, exactly. That's
Cool. All right. Any final thoughts? Anything we didn't cover, or are we good?
I have one little thing. I thought we kind of went back and forth on this a bit about having a mailing list. I was thinking the other day that I would quite like to have one because it's quite good for sort of long form, you know, design discussions, that sort of stuff. And it's quite asynchronous, where Slack tends to just kind of scroll past, and if you miss it, you miss it. Are there any votes in favor, maybe?
I think it makes sense. Some people are less inclined to use a Slack for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. Yep, that's a good point too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Slack is bad for planning. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. You can't really count on things being decided or done quickly on a mailing list. But yes, good for discussions, I think. Okay.
I really like the idea of having a monthly call on design issues or stuff like that. Not going over each issue or each pull request, but more talking broadly about the direction. I think that's valuable for me, at least.
Yep.
Even if we don't want to go into detail about all the issues, we could just have like a agenda item, say, okay, look at the numbers, like are bugs getting or issues getting out of control? Like, do we need to do something? All stuff we could do there as well.
Project management by exception.
Yes.
Seems reasonable.
Fire an alert.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. In that case, thanks everyone for your time, and also want to say thanks Nick and Hide for stepping up as maintainers. Like Michael didn't mention you explicitly, but
Sorry.
it was in general, I think like a lot of
problem.
people have been stepping up in the past weeks, like Brand, you as well on Slack, and Stefan always. Like it's really great to have a team like this on Flux.
Yeah, I really enjoy being in the Flux room. It's cool that people are helping each other. You know.
Yeah, it's been really nice to see people, maintainers on Slack helping out, and I just figured it's good to give back a little bit because I've gone through the pain of figuring things out, so might as well help other people.
Awesome.
All right. Have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Same to you.
Yeah. See you around.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.